Imagine you are standing in your kitchen right now. You reach for a dial on your stove, turn it slightly, and a blue flame flickers into life. It is such a simple, mindless action that we never stop to think about how it actually works. We have essentially tamed a dragon and put it in a box to boil our pasta. But for our ancestors, fire was not a convenience. It was the only thing standing between them and total, permanent extinction. To understand why you are here today, we have to travel back to a time when humanity almost vanished from the face of the earth. Welcome to the Pleistocene, a time when the world was a very different, very dangerous place for a hairless ape with no claws. About 2.5 million years ago, the Earth began to undergo a massive transformation. The climate started to shift violently. This was the beginning of the glacial cycles. Huge sheets of ice began to crawl across the continents like slow-moving monsters. At its peak, ice covered nearly 30% of the entire planet. To put that in perspective, only 10% is covered today. In places like Europe and Northern Asia, the temperature did not just drop a little bit. It plummeted by 20 degrees Celsius or more. Imagine a winter where the air hits -40 degrees. There are no heaters, no thermal jackets, and no solid walls to hide behind. For most species, this was a death sentence. And for a long time, it looked like we wouldn't make it either. There is a secret buried in our DNA that tells a terrifying story about this era. It is called a genetic bottleneck. Roughly 900,000 years ago, something catastrophic happened to our ancestors. The population did not just decline, it collapsed. New genomic studies suggest that we lost over 98% of our breeding population during this period. It was a near total wipeout. Imagine the entire human race reduced to just 1,280 individuals. That is fewer people than you would find in a single high school for over 100,000 years. Those few survivors clung to life by their fingernails. They were an endangered species in a frozen world. Why did they survive when so many others did not? The answer lies in their ability to conquer 3 specific killers. The first killer was the freezing cold. Without fire, moving into colder regions was impossible for a tropical primate like us. Fire gave our ancestors a portable climate. It was a bubble of heat they could carry with them as they migrated north. Before fire, humans were trapped in the warmest parts of Africa. After fire, we could suddenly walk into the heart of a frozen tundra. We were no longer at the mercy of the weather. We were the only animals on Earth that could create our own summer in the middle of a blizzard. But even if you could stay warm, you still had to deal with the second killer, starvation. This is where the story gets really interesting. Think about what ancient humans ate. They spent all day foraging for raw roots, tubers, and the occasional piece of meat. Raw food is incredibly difficult for the human body to process. Our stomachs have to work overtime to break down those tough fibers. When you eat raw starch, your body only absorbs about 50% of the energy. The rest just passes through you, wasted. But when you cook that same food, everything changes. Heat breaks down the proteins and gelatinizes the starches in a way our guts love. Suddenly, that food provides 95% of its energy to your body. It is like an instant caloric boost. This led to what scientists call the cooking hypothesis. It explains why we look the way we do today compared to other primates. Our brains are energy hogs. They make up only 2% of our body weight, but consume 20% of our daily calories. In nature, a big brain is an expensive luxury that most animals cannot afford. You simply cannot find enough raw food to power it. By cooking our meals, we outsourced the work of digestion to the fire. Our guts didn't have to be massive and complex anymore. As our guts shrank, We saved huge amounts of energy. Evolution then took that extra energy and funneled it directly into our growing brains. This was the ultimate trade-off. We traded a giant stomach for a giant mind, all because we learned how to roast our dinner. But being smart and warm doesn't matter if you get eaten in the middle of the night. This brings us to the third killer: predators. In the Pleistocene, humans were not the apex predators we are today. We were often the ones being hunted. We shared the landscape with monsters. Saber-toothed cats with knives for teeth and giant hyenas the size of modern lions. These predators were mostly nocturnal. They owned the night, and they had eyes designed to see us long before we saw them. Before fire, sunset was a terrifying deadline. Humans had to find a tree or a cave and huddle together in total darkness. But fire changed the rules of the game. Most animals have a deep instinctual fear of flames that goes back millions of years. A campfire created a 360-degree shield of protection. It was the only weapon that worked while you were asleep. Imagine the shift in confidence. Instead of hiding in the shadows, humans could sit around a bright light and watch the predators circle helplessly in the distance. This brings up an important question. When exactly did we move from just using fire to actually making it ourselves? There is a big difference between finding a tree struck by lightning and knowing how to create a spark from scratch. Early humans like Homo erectus were likely opportunistic users. They would harvest fire from natural disasters and try to keep it burning forever. If the fire went out, they were in trouble. They might have to wait years for another lightning strike to provide a new flame. But about 400,000 years ago, something changed. Evidence from places like Suffolk, England, shows we became masters of the spark. Archaeologists found pieces of iron pyrite and flint tools used to strike sparks. These were the very first matchsticks. Once we could make fire on demand, we were no longer just survivors. We became the masters of our environment. This mastery led to the most important side effect of all, the campfire effect. This is what truly made us human. Before fire, life was lived in the daylight. Once the sun went down, there was nothing to do but wait for morning. Fire extended the day. It gave our ancestors an extra 4 or 5 hours of social time every single evening. They didn't just sit there in silence. They looked at the flames, they shared their cooked food, and they started to talk. This is likely where complex language and storytelling were born. Around the fire, we stopped being just animals and became a culture. We shared strategies for the next day's hunt. We told stories about our ancestors and taught our children how to survive. Fire turned the cold, dark night into a classroom and a theater. It bonded us together in a way that no other species had ever experienced. Today, we think of fire as a tool for camping or cooking. But for those 1,280 survivors, it was a miracle. It was the engine of our migration. It allowed us to cross the mammoth steppe and populate every corner of the globe. Every time you look at a flame, you are looking at the reason your brain is big enough to understand these words. We are the only creatures on this planet that can control the very thing most life forms fear above all else. It is a heavy legacy to carry. Our ancestors didn't just survive the Ice Age, they used it to forge a new kind of existence. So next time you click a lighter or start a grill, take a second to remember the spark. Remember the people who kept the fire alive when the world was freezing. Without that small, flickering light in the darkness, the human story would have ended a long time ago. Instead, we used that light to see the path forward, and we are still walking that path today, powered by the same ancient heat. Thank you for exploring the origins of our flame. If you enjoyed this journey through time, make sure to stay curious. There are many more stories hidden in our past, waiting to be explained simply. Until next time, keep your fire burning.